The architectural stage in South Africa is very Western European and very driven by capitalism. At the moment, it's driven by technology and Green Star rating. Good architecture is seen to be those high-rise buildings with glass being imported from Mexico that cost a fortune, but they 26 or 27 stories high. They get a 5-star green rating, which has got absolutely nothing to do with humans, nothing to do with anything other than the object. The advantage is that we've never had money on our projects. It's probably the single biggest advantage. And I think the global economic crisis is going to be a very good advantage for all architects, because you get stripped from being driven by, just having a lot of money and you can make decisions, any kind of decisions. But we've never had big budgets. So we always start thinking, you don't want to put money into the ground. So we would like to dig foundations with human hands. They can be simply dug. You cast the concrete, the minimum amount of concrete that you need to cast, and then you start building a brick wall, which is a natural product from clay. And we build cavity walls in Cape Town, which gives an air gap of 50 millimeters. It's incredibly simple. People can learn very quickly to do it, and it's incredibly strong from a structural point of view. The wall's not going to burn down. It can't burn down, the brick. So it's an incredibly robust structure at the end of the day. So we try and build, you'll see, very simple box elements that we juxtapose to each other. So the exciting shapes are coming out in the juxtapositioning of very simple brick boxes. If you look at the informal settlement or the African village, they would contain the specialized, like sleeping, would be in the hut, or even in an informal settlement. The lounge and the kitchen and the music there would often be defined elements in the enclosed space. And the in-between was the flexible, where anything can happen. You can have a lot of different things happening, and particularly social interaction. I think that's another thing that's really positive in Africa, is there's a lot of social interaction on the streets. The streets are alive. People know what their neighbors are doing. Whereas if you come into the area where I live, nobody knows what any of their neighbors are doing. People are living behind very high walls. But inside the boxes, we normally place the functional things. So if you're designing a clinic, you will make sure that the very clinical aspects are in the boxes, whereas the in-between become the space where people interact, where they wait, where there's really richness, where we would maybe introduce some mosaic. We would really make it a rich space so that they can forget about why they've come to the clinic. So it's playing a game the whole time and just reinforcing it with the fundamentals of these boxes with in-between spaces. In a lot of these areas, there are professional masons. So we always try and get somebody who's highly skilled and who can lay the best bricks. So I think even if you look at the quality of our buildings, they are really, really well built with local people who live often within 2 or 3 kilometers from the site. They also do the electrical installation. Either they do it collaboratively with someone who comes from outside, or most of the times we try and get local people to do it. So it's the plaster work, it's a simple process. Paving, the tiling, the ceramics. We try and choose very simple construction methods. And the big clinic that we're finishing now, it was quite exciting because there's some young people on the site working for the contractor, not necessarily from this community, but they are from another community outside, but they all come from a carpentry tradition. And what they've now been able to do is to put the roof on themselves without getting a subcontractor. And the quality of the work is just 1,000,000 times better than when you have a subcontractor who dumps 2 of his laborers with some sheeting on the site and he gives you a bad product. I think that I learned what I know through reading African writers because it gave me access into some complex social conditions and cultural behavior. So Watiyunga Ngugi, the Kenyan writer, has had a huge influence on our work, the way we do participation. He actually went to jail in Kenya for participation. He used participation as a means of getting people off alcohol. He was incredible in growing his social strength in the community. So we very much enjoyed that, and he used narrative as a way of getting people to engage themselves. And also in Africa, storytelling is the basis of our culture. The Khoisan, which were the first inhabitants of Africa, they tell stories. So narrative becomes a way of life. And we just found it a very interesting way of listening to people's stories and then actually using it to influence our design process. Modern Western architecture strips itself, as Johanni Palasma puts it so nicely, that it just becomes a skin. There's very little three-dimensionality to it. And it's quite interesting that when modern man goes on a tour of Europe, the first thing they go to is a Baroque building because they love the three-dimensional quality, the depth, the stained glass windows. So I think it's the memory of that kind of richness in architecture that we are trying to recreate. We don't have the means, the financial ability, but we definitely have the influence of that layering so it's not just a spatial layering, but also a layering of materials. And that's why we really enjoy using mosaic and three-dimensional carvings. We like doing handrails with recycled materials so that it just gives it another dimension. We try to de-institutionalize things. I think it's really important that we, and particularly with the clinics in South Africa all look the same. They have these major blocks and these long corridors, and you never know where you are, and people are illiterate, they can't find themselves. So what we've tried to do is that when you stand in the waiting area, you can identify all the blocks. And it's as you move around, you very quickly know that the blue block is on that corner, and you remember the corner because every corner is different. Whereas if everything is straight, then every corner looks the same. So we're trying to make areas so that people can identify. If they come back to the clinic, they might be coming for rehabilitation. They know where their area is. They know they don't have to panic. They know they walk around once and then they're there. So it's trying to give reference. It might look sort of deconstructed, but there's a logical way it's always arranged around circulation and very logically arranged. But I must say the chief director of Public Works, who is responsible for this clinic project, he said to me that it looked to him like a squatter camp. And he said, we must please not build squatter camps for clinics. So it'll be interesting to see his response when it's finished. It will be very good to see how he responds then.